Everyone, so for today's lesson, we are going to have a discussion about scientific revolution or in Tagalog ay ang scientificong paghihimagsikan. In this revolution, it brought drastic change in scientific thought that took place during the 16th and 17th century. Meaning to say, ito po yung panahon kung saan nagkaroon ng malaking pagbabago tungkol sa ating agham at siyensya. Okay? And when we are talking about scientific revolution, there are three persons behind this success. And the first one is Nicolaus Copernicus, second is Charles Darwin, and the third one is Sigmund Freud. So let's start with Nicolaus Copernicus. For nearly 2,000 years, civilization in astronomy was dominated by the Aristotle and Ptolemaic model of the universe. Meaning to say, when we are talking about heavenly bodies, so ibig sabihin po mas pinaniniwalaan at namamayagpag ang ideya ni Aristotle na pinaniniwalaan ng buong mundo. While in Ptolemaic model of the universe Ptolemy stated that the earth is the center of the universe, or what we call the geocentric. And those views began to change with Nicolaus Copernicus model, okay? And that is what we call the heliocentric, okay? Or the sun is the center of the earth. And because of his model, he was raised in the Roman Catholic Church and feared persecution and heresy. And dahil po si Nicolaus Copernicus ay maagang naulila sa kanyang ama, so pinag-aral po siya ng kaniyang tiyuhin na kapatid ng kanyang ina dahil nakitaan siya ng potensyal at talino. And then after po niya makapag-aral, nandoon yung kanyang fund sa ating heavenly body sa pag-aaral about astronomy. And because of his idea ng heliocentric, doon siya pinarusahan ng ating Catholic Church. Kasi nga po, noon malakas po ang puwersa ng ating religion. Kung ano po yung pinaniniwalaan ng kaparian ng ating mga bishop, yun din po ang paniniwalaan ng mga tao. And that is because against siya sa paniniwala ni Aristotle at ni Ptolemy, kaya po siya ay pinarusahan ng Catholic Church. And he was interested in astronomy and science from a young age. Astronomy of that time was based on Ptolemy's model of Aristotle universe, and the Copernican model was heliocentric, or the sun-centered. So if you're going to look at the diagram, so you can see that in his model, the sun is the center, sunod-sunod na si Mercury, Venus, Earth, okay, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. And in his book on the revolution of celestial spheres, published after his death in 1543, Copernicus outlined his argument that sun, not the earth, was the center of the universe. Kaya po sinasabi diyan, hanggang sa mamatay siya, pinaglalaban niya that the sun is the center, not the earth. Okay? So if you're going to look at the picture, this is the different diagram or illustration of different model about the universe. So we have the Ptolemy's world, Heraclides, and the next is we have the heliocentric. Next, in his model explained the retrograde motion of some planets from Earth's perspective. This was because the Earth's orbit sun faster some planets and slower than others. So in his model, pinatutunayan niya yung retrograde motion, wherein sinasabi niya na ang both planets move in a desired motion around the sun, but yung mga planet na malapit dito or smaller sa ating sun, sila yung nagmo-move faster kaysa sa mga planet na malalayo sa sun. Okay? And he also believed in the theory of uniform circular motion like Aristotle, even though he recognized it did not precisely describe planetary motion. So naniniwala siya sa idea ni Aristotle na ang isang bagay o ang ating mga planet ay umiikot sa isang path, okay, circular path. Next is that, nevertheless, Copernicus' hypothesis that the universe was heliocentric was correct, even though it was different from what we know to be correct. So, dati noon nga, kanilang pinaniniwalaan ng geocentric that the Earth is the center. So you can see, nagpalit ng pwesto si Earth at si Sun. Kay Ptolemy, sinabi niya si Earth ay center at ang pagkakasunod-sunod na mga planet ay started with Mercury, Venus, the Sun, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. Okay? While in his model, he showed that the Sun is the center, Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn ang pagkakasunod-sunod. And that is correct, 'di ba? Alam na tunay na itong heliocentric is a correct and the factual about our universe. Hindi tulad ng mga pinaniniwalaan ng ating mga sinaunang tao. Mga unang tao. Okay? The Copernican revolution was a gradual recognition that Earth was not the center of the universe, meaning gradual, matagal pa hanggang sa mamatay. Kung kailan pa siya namatay, saka lang siya na-recognize na tama ang kanyang paniniwala. Okay? And because of heliocentric, it changed the paradigm scientists use and paradigm a set of scientific ideas and assumption. Okay? In this revolution, it has helped change our views of our place in the universe by making us not necessarily the most important part of it and helping the humanity realize that we are a part of the universe but not the biggest part. And that is the most na kanyang ito yung bagay na ating napagtanto, okay, na ating natutunan, that the earth is not the center of the universe. Ibig sabihin, hindi ang mundo ang gitna, okay, samantalang tayo ay parte lamang ng universe, but we are not the center. And according to him, to know that we know what we know, and to know that we do not know what we do not know, and that is a true knowledge. Okay? Next is that Charles Darwin. So, the theory of evolution. In his Darwin's theory of natural selection, we have developed a theory of evolution based on a natural selection. Why was Darwin's work controversial? Because we do believe in creationism, believe that God created all living things to be unique, and we also have the evolution, the theory that organisms have changed over time. So that is the reason why it became controversial, kasi nga kinakalaban niya ang relihiyon. Okay? Next, until the 80s, people thought the same type of organism on Earth were always in existence. Meaning, kung ano man po yung hayop na naabutan nila, yung mga organism na nakikita nila, akala nila, yun yung nag-e-exist lang. Until this change when scientists found fossils of organism no longer on Earth. Doon nila napatunayan that the Earth is 1 million years old. So, ibig sabihin, napakatanda na at maraming organism na ang nag-extinct. Okay? At naka-survive. Next, what made Darwin question previous assumption on how different organisms came to be? Because scientists observe some fossil evidences, meaning nakakita sila ng mga buto. Okay? Many different species and different variation within species. Okay? Changing thought, scientists began to wonder how and why these changes took place. So, doon na sila nagkaroon ng curiosity. Ano ba nangyayari sa Earth? Ano ba yung mga past? At ano yung pwedeng maging present nito? Yung present na maging itsura, yung kanyang atmosphere, yung kanyang environment. And we have two biologists believe organisms change in response to their environment. And we have the first John Baptist Lamarck, while we have British Charles Darwin. So first is that we have the Lamarck's theory. In 1809, Lamarck proposed his theory of evolution, theory based on two hypotheses. The organism developed traits by use and disuse of the body parts, meaning to say, kapag ang isang bagay ay hindi na nagagamit sa parte ng isang organism, yun ay totally nawawala, okay? Or nag-e-extinct. While yung kapag naman yung bagay ng parte ng kanyang katawan ay laging niyang ginagamit, yun yung magkakaroon ng flexibility. Okay? Yung nakukuha niya yung acquired traits na gusto niya. And Next is acquired characteristic, meaning kung ano yung parents, yun din yung bunga. Yun ang kanyang Lamarck's theory. According to Lamarck, why do giraffes have long necks? So, yun yung ginawa niyang example. According to him, he assumed giraffes have short necks originally and ate grass. Grass died due to climate change. Giraffes ate leaves of trees. As giraffes stretched the neck, necks grew. Giraffes acquired long necks passed to future generation, and scientists question this theory. Kasi ito po yung most questionable. Nang dahil lang po ba sa hindi na sila makakain ng damo dito ng grass, okay, sa land. So, dahil nga sa kagustuhan nilang makaabot ng leaves doon sa trees, in-stretch sila ng in-stretch ang kanilang leeg, kaya humaba ang kanilang neck. Okay? And that is questionable. Kasi po, according to him, giraffes acquired long necks passed to future generation nang dahil ba sa kanilang desired characteristic na mapahaba ang leeg para makasurvive, ay ganoon na din ang magiging kanilang offspring. The reason why ito ay naging questionable. Okay? In Charles Darwin, born in 1809, meaning to say, noong pinaglalaban pa nila Marx niya yung kanyang teorya, doon pa lang ipinanganak si Charles Darwin. At the age of 22, went on voyage on HMS Beagle as a naturalist and mapping expedition of South America and South Pacific. Okay? In Darwin's thought, Charles Lyell book influenced Darwin. Lyell said Earth was a millions of years old, and that is correct. Observe fossils of marine animals on mountain, meaning to say, nagkaroon ng changes ang environment noon kasi nga sobrang tanda na ng Earth. So, yung dating mga karagatan, naging lupa, yung lupa, naging karagatan. Okay? So, yun yung changes. Observe a changing earth, earthquakes, volcanoes, so change in the land. And that is the reason na patunayan niya kaya nagkakaroon ng another form of land. Okay? And also ocean. Thought organism would have to adapt to these changes. Okay? Next, in Darwin's study, he observed thousands of different species. He took careful notes, collected species, and studied fossils. The question is, what is the difference between natural selection and artificial selection? And what is the difference between natural selection and evolution? Okay? According to him, there is a difference between artificial and natural. When we are talking about artificial, it is a breeding for desired traits. So, meaning to say, artificial, gawa. Okay? The reason why nagkaroon ng ganitong traits kasi ginusto. While in natural, naturally desired traits are bred more often, causes gradual change in species over time. Ibig sabihin, pag natural, basically, there's no force na pumilit. Okay? So, natural na nangyari. In Darwin's theory, he published the book on the origin of the species by means of natural selection with help from another scientist, Alfred Russel Wallace, and in his theory based on four main ideas. We have the variation or the differences, inheritance of traits, overproduction, and survival of the fittest. Okay? First is we have the variation or pagkakaiba-iba. So he stated that variation occur among members of the same species. For example, we have different breeds of dog, and that is correct. We also have different breeds of horses and cats. So, inheritance of variation, meaning traits are inherited. Meaning, kung ano yung characteristic, siya ay naisasalin. Okay? Also, in order to have a natural selection, we have overproduction. Organism produce more organism than can survive and reproduce. This ensure that some offspring will survive to reproduce. Ano example? Yung fish, insect, frogs, and etc. So, in order for them to survive at hindi mag-extinct, kailangan nilang mag-produce ng kanilang offspring. And that is overproduction. While, according to him, there are also a survival of the fittest. Organisms with traits that are better for adapting survive to reproduce. Pass on these useful traits, and natural selection environment determines which variation will be selected. So from the word survival of the fittest. So the strong remains strong, the weak remains weak. Ibig sabihin, kapag po ikaw ay isang organism na mahina, so you have the possibility na mag-extinct. While if you are an organism na merong positive or strong personality at traits, so you have the chances na mag-remain. Okay? Okay? So in his theory, we have the evidence of evolution. So the fossil, anatomy, embryos, molecules, and biogeography. Okay? So let's start with homologous structure. So the reason why naniniwala siya sa kanyang teorya because pinag-aralan niya yung iba't ibang buto ng mga organism. And he realized na pare-pareho, may pagkakapare-pareho ang human, cat, bird, and whale. So pareho silang may numerous, radius, ulna, and carpal. Okay? Next, homologous versus analogous. Remember, homologous is similar structure, ibig sabihin, pareho sila kung paano man yung physical structure nila, at analogous ay similar ng function, pero iba ng structure. Katulad ng bat's wing and bird's wing. Imagine nyo, yung wings nila ay pareho nilang ginagamit sa paglipad, pero iba yung physical structure nila. Kasi nga po, si bat, kung makikita mo yung kanyang pakpak, ito ay parang balat. Samantalang si bird, may feather. Okay? The reason why, similar with function, but different in structure. Gets? Next is that, this is example of homology. So, human, bird, porpoise, and elephant, homology. So, also, kaya siya naging analogy between fly. Imagine nyo, magkaiba sila ng kanilang same function, different structure. Next, evidence in embryos. So, according to him, pattern of meiosis, gamete, fertilization, mitosis, so ganun daw po nag-undergo ang mga organism. Pare-pareho sila. Nag-i-start sa meiosis hanggang sa maging adult. While all vertebrates embryos have homologous structure that may not be in adults, like tail and limb bulbs become limbs. Vertebrates have a common ancestor. If you're going to look at the picture, tingnan nyo from sa taas, okay, hanggang pababa, taas pababa. So, we have the fish. So, ganyan po yung itsura niya hanggang sa maging fish. While salamander, di ba, may pagkakapare-pareho silang lahat hanggang sa maging isang species na sila or organism. So, kaya sinabi niya na kapag under ng mga gametes, fertilization, mitosis, pare-pareho ang itsura ni organism. Okay? Next, according to him, about molecular evidences, DNA or the basic genetic code for each species. So, pag sinabi po, yan yung sinasabi nating example, all have same basic genetic code. Meaning, ang ating mga species may guanine, may thymine, may cytosine, adenine. So, yun yung mga genetic code. Pare-pareho. While species that are similar have many similarities in their DNA, species with a more distant ancestor have more differences in DNA. While in molecular evidences about protein, because of similar DNA, organisms of the same species have the same basic protein, and similar species, similar amino acid sequences in their proteins. While when we are talking about biogeography, study of distribution of organism on Earth, similar environment lead to similar adaptation in organism even if far apart. So meaning to say, yun nga po nakita niya na yung mga organism na makikita sa ocean, sa tubig, ay may pagkakapare-pareho, and also yung mga animals or organism na makikita sa land ay meron ding pagkakatulad-tulad. And that is how the distribution, at pareho sila ng function, di ba? Yung fish ay parang yung kanilang function or physical feature ay para makalangoy. They have tails, so they have yung kanilang mga physical feature. And also sa mammals, so may mga paa sila, may mga feet sila para makalakad at makatakbo. Okay? And also adaptation. Okay, traits that allow for survival, and fitness, way to measure how effective traits are. And what are those examples of adaptation? Camouflage and mimicry. When we say camouflage, it is something yung pagiging one mo sa isang plants or sa trees. So yun yung tinatawag na halimbawa ginagaya ng mga chameleon. So nagiging part sila para sila ay makasurvive. While si mimicry, yung isang organism, ginagaya niya yung kaibang organism or ibang species para matakot yung kanilang mga predator. Ginagaya nila yung ibang organism. And that is the difference. Camouflage, nagiging isa sila sa environment. Mimicry, ginagaya nila yung ibang species. Okay? Next is that, remember that not all traits evolve slowly kasi merong mga bacteria, 'di ba? Mabilis kumalat si bacteria, mag-produce si bacteria. Not all traits increase fitness, and mutation can be a source of new traits. Okay? So we are done in the evolution. So in evolution, dun natin malalaman that there are different theory kung saan nagsimula ang organism. So dun na po nag-start ang ating mga scientists na mag-develop, maghanap ng explanation kung saan nga ba nagsimula ang mga tao. Okay? Next is that we have the psychology or si Sigmund Freud. Okay? Sigmund Freud is a Austrian doctor, a father of psychoanalysis, and one of the first psychologists to study human motivation. So he also stated the psychiatry versus psychology, meaning the difference about psychiatry, it is more on doctor, yung medical doctor si psychiatry. So ang ginagamit niya po para maggamot ay yung mga prescribed medication, yung mga gamot po. While in psychology, it is more on the study of the human behavior. Tapos nag-check po sila ano ba yung therapy na pwedeng magamit para magamot si patient. Okay? And up until 20th century, frontal laboratories were performed on the patient. Okay? Freud believed that mental illness is a result of nurture, not nature. So what is the difference between nurture and nature? When we are talking about nurture, that means it is the environment, external. Okay? Yung mental illness daw ay nakukuha sa kung ano yung environment na nasa paligid niya. Halimbawa, ito ay social relationship, kung ano yung kultura. While in nature, ito yung physical na ina-inherent mo do sa biological, yung sa science to. Okay? Nature is more on kung ano yung physical features, kung ano yung ugali. So, yun po yung sinasabi. Yun ang pinagkaiba niya. He asked the question, what makes people do things? And the answer is motivation. Okay? Needs motivate human behavior, and that is the reason why gumagawa si tao ng isang bagay na hindi maganda or ginagawa ni tao yung bagay na ikabubuti. Okay? And that makes people do things. Okay? We also have our Maslow hierarchy of human needs. So, in psychological, ito yung nasa base ng pyramid. So, what are those psychological? We have breathing, food, water, sex, sleep, homeostasis, excretion. While sinabi ni Maslow noon na kapag naging 100% ka na daw na complete dito sa base, pwede ka nang tumaas in the next stage, which is the safety. Security of body, of employment, of resources, of morality, of the family, of health, of property. While after mo ma-fulfill yung safetyness, pwede ka nang mapunta sa another stage, which is the love and belonging, friendship, family, sexual intimacy. And next, we have the esteem, self-esteem, confidence, achievement, respect of others, respect by others. And ang pinakamataas ay ang self-actualization, which is a morality, creativity, spontaneity, problem solving, lack of prejudice, acceptance of facts. So according to him, para ka makapunta sa ibang stage, kailangan mo maging 100% complete. While later on, binawi ito ni Maslow na sinabi niya, hindi mo kailangan maging 100% na kumpleto dito bago ka makapunta sa ibang stage. Kasi daw po, may mga priority sa mga tao. Minsan, kailangan mo ng food, pero hindi mo kailangan ng sex. Minsan, kailangan mo ng sleep, and there are time na hindi mo naman, yun po yung sinasabi natin na case to case basis. Yung sinasabi, may mga bagay tayong priority, may mga bagay tayong mas basic needs kaysa sa ibang bagay. Okay? Being deprived of a need arouses a feeling called drive or desire. Animal respond instinctively, human learn various ways to respond. Okay? While human motivation explains the reason why people behave the way they do, and that is people have drives or desire in the back of their mind. Example, will to live and will to die. Some of this desire causes people to behave irrationally, and that is the reason bakit nakakagawa ang isang tao ng isang bagay na hindi mabuti. Kasi yun yung drive or desire niya. Okay? Next, people are born with certain number of instinct or drive. So we have three aspects which influence behavior, and that is the id, superego, and ego. Okay? So let's have a comparison between these three desire. We also have, first we have id, or the unconscious part. So ibig sabihin from the word unconscious, ito yung mga bagay na hindi ka aware. This part of the mind seeks to bring us pleasure or animalistic, okay, drive, primitive part of personality including aggression and sexual drives, while ego, si conscious part of the mind. So ikaw, aware ka dito because it decides what action to take for positive means and what to do based on what is believed in the right thing to do. You are aware of the reality. While superego, unconscious part of the mind. So ito pa rin yung part na hindi ka aware. Okay, that acts as a conscience. Conscience remind us of what we should do. Okay? The id and the superego are always in constant conflict. Kasi si id, yan po yung ating sinasabing pleasure natin, yan yung mga want. Versus si superego na siya yung konsensya. Okay? Your drive tells you to do one thing while society tells you to do something else. So here's a better explanation like id, for id, ego, and superego. Always remember when we heard the word id, it is always about the desire. Okay? Yan yung animalistic part mo. While si ego, ito yung conscious na nag-decide sa sarili mo, at si superego na nagiging konsensya mo. So there are times na sinasabi na si id ay hindi laging masama at si superego ay hindi laging mabuti. Kasi for example po, okay? Like id, para masabi kong si id ay hindi lagi masama. Kasi imagine mo after this pandemic, 'di ba? Ng mga na-depress, mga na-stress. So, you deserve a treat, 'di ba? Dahil alam mong ikaw ay nag-aaral ng ayos, tapos nagkatapos ng pandemic, pagkatapos ng pandemic nito, ang gagawin mo, iti-treat mo ang self mo, 'di ba? Iti-treat mo ang self mo kasi at least you survive, 'di ba? Naayos mo yung academic year ngayon, nag-aaral ka, so you deserve a treat. And yung treat na sinasabi ko, yun yung animalistic or your pleasure. Binigyan mo yung sarili mo ng treat dahil yun yung makakapagpasaya sa'yo, 'di ba? While yun yung time naman na yung superego ay hindi po lagi minsan nakakabuti. For example, ikaw na kaklase, alam mong nanggagaya yung kaklase mo. And then dahil nga si superego ang nanaig sa iyo, yung conscience, sinabi mo sa teacher mo na nandadaya yung kaklase mo. After po noon, ano nangyari? Naging 0 ang kaklase mo, hindi siya nakatake ng exam, naparusahan pa siya ng teacher. And then, dahil sa nakita mo yung ganong sitwasyon niya, ikaw yung na-stress. Okay? That is the reason, minsan, ang superego o konsyensya natin ay hindi nakakabuti. Okay? Kasi instead na ginawa mo lang kung ano yung mismong dapat, nagkaroon ka pa ng another problem. Okay? Next, Sigmund Freud, the founder of psychoanalysis, compared the human mind to an iceberg. The tip above the water represents consciousness, and the vast region Below the surface symbolizes the unconscious mind. Freud's three basic personality structure, the id, ego, and superego, only the id is totally unconscious. Okay? Next. Okay? Freud's view of the human mind, the mental iceberg. So, if you're going to look at the level sa lower part, yun yung mga unconscious level mo. Ito yung mga hindi ka aware, like yung mga takot mo, violent motives, immoral urge, yung selfish needs mo, shameless experience, irrational wishes, and unacceptable desire, sexual desire. While yung sa mga bagay na conscious level ka, yun yung mga thoughts and perception mo sa buhay, yung mga memories at mga stock knowledge and preconceptional level. Okay? Next, if you don't resolve this conflict between the id and the ego, si id, okay? Si id na pleasure at si ego na nagdi-decide, kapag hindi mo yan naayos yung conflict between, doon ka magkakaroon ng happiness or mental distress. Kasi doon ka magkakaroon ng hindi matapos-tapos na wants and desire. Okay? Thus, in order to understand motivation, you must understand what is in your unconscious memory. This is the basis of psychoanalysis. So, meaning to say, dapat alam mo ang isang bagay kung ano yung tingin mo na nagbibigay sa'yo ng motivation. Yun yung tinatawag na dapat malaman mo ano ba yung unconscious memory mo. Okay? And that is all for today. Okay?